So here we are again. I'm going to talk about Calgary. Now, I'll admit, I'm wearing an Atlanta Flames jersey. I wanted something traditional. I don't have the original Flames jersey. So, I didn't want to wear the one that matches this because I'm difficult. Sometimes I'm just difficult. But yeah, let's talk about Calgary. Let's talk about Calgary because there's a lot to talk about with the Flames. And I think some Flames fans may have got me the wrong way here. I'm going to start with goaltending here because Mike Smith, at 35 years of age, I'll be completely honest, I'm a little nervous about him as Calgary's starting goaltender. Smith played very, very well for Arizona last year. Smith is not a consistent goaltender from season to season. And he had issues in Tampa, he had issues in Dallas, and you know, Arizona was very good for him. Switching over to Calgary could be an issue. I'm not saying it will be, I'm just saying it could be, and we watched what happened with Elliott last year, and by the time Elliott was comfortable, the Flames moved on. Lack as a backup, I've said it before in videos about Eddie Lack. Eddie Lack is a slow starter. Eddie Lack is usually really good from January on. From October to December, he usually has his struggles. Which is why Gillies is on this board, because John Gillies could very well get a chance to come in and prove himself before the season's over. But before Calgary fans say, wow, you're really down on them. No. I actually think they'll be third in their division. See, for me, the whole thing with Calgary comes down to they have enough offense, and their defense is fantastic. So I think they have enough to be relevant and get into the playoffs. So, goaltending, let's just assume the goaltending's going to be fine. And if Smith shows up this year the way he did this past season for Arizona, then Calgary's set for a while. Just waiting until focused. So up front, you got Gaudreau. I think Gaudreau's going to have a big year. I think Monahan's going to have a big year. I think Tkachuk's going to improve. Do I like Tkachuk on a personal level? No. Do I think he's a very valuable forward? Yes. And I want to dispel one other thing, too. There's been a lot of talk since the draft about the Tkachuk-Ulevy argument. And when the Canucks have been better off with Ulevy. Calgary got a top 6 forward. The Canucks believe Ulevy's going to be a top 4 defenseman. Both teams win. Backlund had a fantastic year this past season. I don't see any reason that doesn't continue. I'm very interested to see what happens with Ferland. Michael Ferland has been a shift disturber, penalty minute guy, but there's talent there. Part of what's maddening with Ferland is he can do better. He's not in a Marchand category, but he is a good player. He has good instincts on the ice. And if this is the line, he could have a very good year. And Frolik is an underrated forward. Now, the key really here, if Calgary's going to become a contender, outside of the goaltending, you need depth and scoring. This third line here, and it may not be Brouwer, okay? So you got Versteeg, Bennett, and it could be Frolik. Brouwer could get bumped up to top 6. Brouwer had a really crap year this past season. Brouwer did not play particularly well, and Brouwer will admit that. He's man enough to admit when he didn't have a very good year. I really think he'll bounce back, and I think he'll end up top 6. But let's just say, for argument's sake, you have Versteeg, Bennett, and Brouwer as your third line. If Bennett is consistent and scores in the 20-goal range and is able to feed these guys well enough on his wing, Calgary can be a contender. Absolutely. And, of course, what Calgary fans are going to be looking at is, well, what about Anaheim? What about Edmonton? Because Edmonton, in the regular season, did a number on Calgary, and in the postseason, Anaheim did a number on Calgary. Calgary did their best, and it was still a sweep. So, I think where they've improved, Gaudreau and Monahan have another year experience. Tkachuk's going into his second year, and Bennett's going into his third. So all of the young forwards are now coming into a training camp with more experience. A full season of Lazar, I think, could be good for them. And Lazar, Stajan, and I'm thinking Spencer Fu makes the lineup, at least opening night. On the fourth line, it's either him or Hathaway on that wing. But regardless of which out of these two get that number 4 spot, I think with Lazar and Stajan, I think there's the potential there for a fourth line that's able to score too. So, for depth and scoring, Calgary's deceptively good. Everybody's paying attention to Edmonton right now. And with McDavid, that's going to happen. Everybody pays attention to Pittsburgh in the East. Calgary's going to demand some attention pretty quick in the regular season this coming year, if these parts all fire as they could. Now, if I'm taking them for third, I'm taking them to finish, in a position where they could be out again in the first round. So no, I'm not projecting them to be a contender, but there's some interesting parts here. Does Jankowski come up and play? Because I'm sure there's going to be people who see this and say, well, Jankowski could crack the roster. Let's just say that Jankowski has a great training camp and makes it his fourth line center, and Stajan can be jettisoned. That could change things quite a bit. I don't think it'll happen, because for a fourth line center, Jankowski is slight in his stature. And Stajan is an experienced forward. Jankowski would be a rookie. Of course, as a Canuck fan, one of the more interesting storylines to me is, remember Shinkarik? Shinkarik was a projected top 10 draft pick. He slipped to 23 in the draft to Vancouver. It was 23 or 24. And in the end, he ends up going to Calgary in a deal for Marcus Granlund, which almost every Canuck fan was ready to jump off a bridge over. And you look at it now, and Shinkarik barely makes this team's depth chart. Meanwhile, Marcus Granlund is a pretty promising forward for Calgary. Now, before Calgary fans think that I'm insulting them in any way, shape, or form, there's nowhere for Marcus Granlund in this lineup either. Marcus Granlund doesn't make the Calgary Flames, because the Flames have the depth at center, and they have the depth on the right wing. So the two spots where he may have played in this lineup, no. And on the left side, I don't see where you play him either. So it was a risk they took. Shinkarik didn't work out. Granlund did, but it doesn't really matter because Calgary doesn't have any room for Granlund right now either. The blue line. Mark Giordano is a fantastic defenseman. And I say that as somebody who has no affection for the Flames. Dougie Hamilton is one of my favorite defensemen. So that's a start. TJ Brody, underrated. Travis Hamonic, very smart pickup for Calgary because it sends Stone down to the third pairing with Bartkowski. I watched Bartkowski in Boston. I watched Bartkowski in Vancouver. I'm not sure why he gets some of the jeers he gets from fans of those teams. And it's both Vancouver and Boston. Not all fans. But I like Bartkowski, and I think as a 5-6 option, he's fine. And of course, then you've got Kulak. Wotherspoon is still down there. Shillington is in there as well in the mix. And Anderson is in the mix as well. So there's a lot of youth here. There's a lot to like. Calgary, much like a few other teams I've been looking at lately, injuries could hit them hard and fast, depending on which position. In net, definitely. Blue line, potentially, depending on who it is. But I think up front, I think they're pretty set, as long as it isn't like a couple of long-term injuries to some major players. The real trick for Calgary is going to be Gaudreau and Monahan have got to be on the same page with the team and their line mates and their coach right off the bat. This has to be a a united team right from the beginning, because making the playoffs is no easy task anymore in any division. And people will say, well, it's the Pacific, so it's not that hard. It is, though, when you consider the 3 California teams, who will always give Calgary a hard time. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I have Gazdic playing on the wrong wing. That's why there's an asterisk next to his name. And again, there's some wild cards here. Fu is a wild card. Who knows what's going to happen there? I remember when he was signed, a lot of Flames fans wanted me to talk about him, and it's like, he's NCAA. So what we see in the fall is what we get. NCAA prospects signed as free agents are usually near the top point they're going to get to in their evolution as a player. So you're not going to see a guy who scores 30 goals as a rookie blossom to 60, 70 a couple years down the road if he's an NCAA prospect, because he's likely coming in at 22 or 23 years of age, whereas junior prospects could be playing at 19, where physically they haven't filled out yet. They haven't figured out, the certain parts of the game that are going to make them better players. Calgary's a good team, and I think they get overshadowed by Edmonton for good reason, as I said, McDavid and whatnot. But if Mike Smith is able to put together a solid season, and Mike Smith's going to have to play 60 games, I think it'll be a 60-25 split at the end of the season between him and Lack. If Smith shows all-star form, if he shows no sign of aging, Calgary's all right. If he does, Calgary's going to be in trouble. Because, let's not forget, right now, I have San Jose behind them. And San Jose, they're not very far behind. When I do these predictions, I think what's important for me to say is there's not a lot to choose between teams when it comes to first, second, third, fourth, fifth. The difference is small between each team. Between first and fifth, it's a chasm potentially. But first to second, second to third, third to fourth, it's close. I can't see any of them being more than 5 points between them. But for Calgary, it all comes down to their defense holding up, finding depth of scoring, and the goaltending. There isn't really a whole lot else to add. They're a good young team, and I really honestly think that they're going to take a step forward. Even though I don't think the record's going to get a whole lot better, I think the team is going to get better. Remember, regular season record is fine and dandy. It's what you do in the postseason that matters. And it looks to me like they're trying to build for the postseason now, because they're improving their depth and keeping their sandpaper with guys like Ferland in there. And they seem to realize that their goaltending has been an issue and they needed to change it out. The problem is Calgary seems to be changing their goalies every year or two. Calgary, Philadelphia, and Toronto are 3 teams I think of right away it's been a constant flow of goaltenders coming through. And we'll see how this plays out this year. Let me know what you guys think of my prediction, what you guys are predicting as well for Calgary. Again, no offense that I'm wearing the Atlanta Flames. I love this jersey. I wanted an excuse to wear it, and this is as close as I'm going to get for the summer. So, good luck to the Flames, and that's coming from a Canucks fan who's not a Flames fan, but it's nice to see a Canadian team in the playoffs. It is nice to see a Canadian team doing well, and I want to see the Battle of Alberta be really, really, truly even. So there's some guys on here that have to overachieve in order for that to happen, but I think it could. And I'm looking at Matt Tkachuk when I say that. If Matt Tkachuk has a monster year, Calgary can definitely get into a contender spot quickly. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys again soon.